Everyone, it's Kerri-Ann and I'm back with another video for you. So today, as promised, I'm doing an introduction to flower pressing. So flower pressing has been around for many years, but more recently it has become popular again. I've been doing it since I was about 4 years old, and my nana taught me how to press the petals from her roses. And back then we were actually just doing it in book pages. It did ruin a few books, but yeah, that's how we used to do it then. And then she got me a flower press, and I kept on pressing flowers and things, and I've got scrapbooks full of pressed flowers. And some of them are still, I still got them up in the attic, but they are still nice and haven't deteriorated too much, so it's amazing really. But yeah, I thought I'd show you what I do now. So for the past 6 years I've had my little shop, and I've always done flower pressing, and I'll show you the end product of what I do. I create things and sell them in the shop, in the art gallery part of the shop. So I've actually got some resin cast items that I've made. So this one is a bookmark, and all of the flowers that you find here were flowers from my allotment or my garden. So that one there, you can see it's a bit frosty because it's a little bit of condensation going on in here at the moment. It's very early in the morning. But also sometimes the resin, where I haven't sanded it, it can be a little bit frosty on the resin. So you can resin cast your pressed flowers. Again, there's another resin cast one here. This one is onto a key ring. And then also a necklace. So you can see I've got a variety of flowers that I've pressed. Now these ones here, if I show you, I'm going to need some sort of background. Let's use this white piece of paper here. So this one here, one of the big fern leaves from the garden. And then this one here. So those ones are little plaques which I sort of prop up on display plates. And then I've also been experimenting with pictures. So this one here is a flower arrangement that I've done using various flowers, but then I've actually laid them out in a sort of meadow form. But I've actually used petals there to simplify flowers, but it's actually just the petals broken down. So you don't have to use the flowers in their natural form, you can break them down. And this is one of the bigger pieces that I've done. Obviously remembering that when you are doing pressed flowers into artwork like this, it needs to be out of direct sunlight, because obviously it will bleach out the colours, and if you've done it specifically for the colours, you will lose those beautiful colours. So that's just some of the things you can use your pressed flowers to create. So that's more of the finished product. So let's look at some of the flowers that I've actually got in my dried box. So I keep it in a white box with a lid and out of direct sunlight, because these are the flowers that have been pressed and come out of my presses. I've got 3 presses here, I don't know if you can see. I've got my giant press, I've got my medium press, and I've got my mini press. So those are all the presses that I use. And here's one of the pieces that my sons did a long time ago, I think, and we've just still got the bits there. So I keep some of them in little packs if I collect the same ones, and I put them in there. Some of my favourite things to press are the fern leaves like these. Absolutely love these because you can break them down and use the individual leaves, or you can use them as one piece, and I just find the texture of those are fantastic. I even use leaves that are not fully fresh. So this was actually, when I picked it, it had all those colours and textures in, but I wanted that's one left over, but I wanted it for something that I was creating. And then let's have a look. If I can show you some of these pieces, I've just got pieces of white card, and I've put a little bit of acetate just to protect them. But if I hold this one up, you can see one of the flowers there. I've got lots and lots of different things. Leaves, I absolutely love pressing leaves. So that's where I've obviously broken down one of my viola or pansies. And then I've got lots of different coloured leaves, different shapes and colours. It's really important to remember actually to press lots of leaves, because you'll find that you want to bulk out. There's some more rose petals, so that's where it all started really, rose petals. Yeah, so keep hold of little plastic bags, flat ones if you've got any, from when you buy your jewellery or earrings and things. Keep hold of those because they're actually really handy. And I keep white paper and card in here just to try and keep some of them flat. But think about the shapes, think about all the different types of, let's have a look, some more rose petals of flowers that you can do. I've got some really tiny ones in here. This was much more organised until recently when I did another piece and I didn't tidy it back up. So that is some of the dried flowers that I've actually got pre-dried in the basket. So keep it in a box, keep that box, if you've got an airtight one, fantastic. Make sure it is a blocked out box, so a coloured box, so that you can't get any light to the box. That's one of the key things I would say. So that's storing your pressed flowers when they're finished. So presses come in different shapes and sizes and with different layers in them. So this one here is a very, very old one, and it's actually just got layers of tissue in. Now tissue is fine, so it's tissue and the cardboard that's in there. So the tissue is absolutely fine, but what you will find with tissue is sometimes some of the leaves can stick to it. So if you can, I would recommend using blotting paper. Now blotting paper is over on the devonartsupplies.co.uk website in A4, but if you need it in other sizes, obviously bigger than that, then you can always search online. But obviously if you need it smaller, you can cut it down. So for my A5 press, I just get an A4 piece and I cut it down. A blotting paper will last, so you use it time and time again. You don't need fresh blotting paper for every time you press your flowers. But it is just much better than the tissue paper I've found in my experience. So I do both. I use tissue in some, blotting paper in others, just so that I can keep testing the theory really. So if I just show you the layers in this one, this hasn't actually got anything in at the moment. So this is obviously using tissue paper on some layers, blotting on the others, but it's just the cardboard layers, keeping it all between layers of tissue or blotting paper. So you lay your pressed flowers on, and then you pop the top on, and you have these. You can actually make these yourself if you can. I did find the name of these here, wing nuts or something. I can't remember what they are now, but you can make your own with wood. So if you are thinking of making your own flower press, you're going to need 2 pieces of quite thick wood, and you're going to need 4 of these if it's this sort of size, and I'll show you what you need on the other ones. So let me just pop this to one side a second. Move that one out of the way. So that's how it looks on the press. Let's move that piece of paper out of the way as well. And let's have a quick look at this giant press. Oh, that was a horrible noise, wasn't it? So this is the giant press that I've got here. And this one is, well, it's nearly bigger than A4. Let's say that. So if we move up just slightly so you can see better here. If I move this out of the way, it might help as well, mightn't it? I'm getting a bit crowded on the table here today. It is a big table, but it's not big enough for filming and all of this equipment. Right, so I can't remember actually, if I'm honest, if I have put anything in this one because it's been a bit of a rush recently. But what I would advise is on the top of all of your flower presses, if you have a piece of paper and just put down the day and what you're pressing, because that way, if you put in the date that you actually put the flowers in, you'll know then how long, and the names of the flowers, you'll know how long it's taking for each of them to press the way you want them to. So usually it takes 2 to 3 weeks to press the flowers, depending on the moisture content of the flowers and petals and leaves, but also depending on the temperatures of obviously wherever you're storing them. So I keep these in the studio, so it's quite dry. It's definitely dry, it's quite warm, and mine only seem to be taking 2 to 3 weeks for the majority of the flowers. If I'm using chunkier, thicker flowers, then what seems to happen is they take a bit longer. So they take 4 to 6 weeks sometimes for those ones. So for this giant press, obviously I've got to go round and do each one of these. So these giant presses you can find on the devonartsupplies.co.uk website. They're really reasonably priced actually. The company I think that make them do other sizes, but they're sold out on the website at the moment, but I'm sure they will be back soon. So let's just undo this one. So how many have we got? We've got one more to do. There we go. This is a great activity to do also with children. So you can get them out in the garden, picking some flowers and, excuse me, I'm just going to have some coffee because my throat's gone a bit funny. So you can take them out in the garden, you can get them picking some of the flowers and the leaves and things. It's quite good to have a pair of little snips or little scissors so that you can cut some of them rather than picking them, because if you want sort of specific length stems and things, then that's quite handy. So a pair of scissors is handy, and then just a little plate or tray, and that way then you can put them straight onto a tray. I would advise always, where possible, to press them straight after picking. So please, 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 the fresher the flowers, the better the press that you'll get from the flowers. So let's just have a quick look in here. I don't think I have put anything in here. So there's nothing in here at the moment, so that's fine. This one is a blotting paper one, as you can see. So let's start pressing some flowers today then. Let's have a little look at what we can do. So here's some residue of some flowers that have been pressed recently. So if we go right down to that bottom layer. Okay, so the bottom layer is the piece of card. Then I've got some blotting paper here. And I have been in the garden this morning and got some very fresh flowers. Literally a few moments ago, these flowers and left petals and things were picked. So I've got here various shaped leaves. This is actually a potato plant leaf that I've got here. So this page is going to be for my leaves. I'm not going to today write down the plants and the information on the top. As I say, I only do that when I'm doing like special projects and things, but I'm just showing you today how to lay them out and space out as well. So that's really important, is giving each one plenty of space. You don't want to crowd your page, and also trying to keep the types of leaves and petals that you use on each layer similar in terms of their thickness. So I know that's going to go nice and flat, and I know that one will. But if it was a chunkier, so if this was the piece of lavender here that I've got, if I was doing that on this layer here, what's going to happen is that's going to be slightly too thick and is going to keep the board slightly higher, whereas these then won't get the full press. So if I'm doing a layer of these, I would do all of that thickness. You can see the thickness there, all of that thickness on one layer. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense as to the idea of why you do that, but that will help you get a much better press. So these are just some viola leaves. So do make sure you get a good variety of leaves. So that's from there. Let's pop that there a second. So then I'm going to put down my another sheet of blotting paper. So normally I'd fill that few more around here, but this is just for showing you today. Then you put down your piece of blotting paper, and then you can put down another sheet of card. Then another sheet of blotting paper, and this is where you can start putting some of your flowers down. So some of the flowers that I've got here, I've got Sonetti, I've got some viola plants, that one's been attacked by a slug. I've got some geranium ones, little baby ones. I've even actually got, which is the first time I'm going to try pressing these, I've got foxglove ones here, and because I love the patterns in. Now, do please, please, please remember that some plants are poisonous, like these. Do not touch these with your hands and then touch your hands to your face, because they are poisonous to animals and to people. So with a lot of plants, I would always advise to make sure you wash your hands before you touch your face after doing this. So I'm just going to test these because I've not done these before, but what I think would be fun with these is if I actually cut open the petal. So I'm going to actually do that for one of them and leave one of them solid. So I'm actually going to cut this one open, the little flower, and open it up, because it's the colour in here that I really like. I don't know if you can see that, but I think that's beautiful. So I'm actually going to have a go at pressing that for the first time, and I'm going to open it up and lay it like so, and hopefully that, once I've put the card on, will flatten down and I'll get a nice press on that one. So again, I would fill that up, which I can always go back and do, but let's just move on to the next layer. So blotting paper down again, card down again, blotting paper. And let's just fill this up with some flowers. Now, you can do it sideways if you want to press them sideways, but just remember about the thickness. And the reason why I cut the flower to this length before I start pressing is it holds the petals together. If you cut here or too close, what's going to happen is all the petals are going to come detached. And that's fine if you only want the petals, but if you want the shape of, hopefully, let's just move that and come forward a bit. So if you want the shape of them to stay together, then keep part of this that connects the flower. So what I can do is I can come in and I can snip up to there, but if I wanted, I could snip right in there, but it would mean that these would become disconnected. So it's up to you whether you want them connected or not. So again, just remember that the thickness there is thicker than if I was going to be putting these on, because that is not as thick as that there. So for this layer, what I would recommend is putting in the thicker flowers. So I'm just cutting those right down, don't want those pieces. Putting stems in is a good idea as well, so you could put some stems in, that would be useful. I'm going to put in the lavender because that's quite thick, similar to that one with this. There's another piece here, so we'll put that one on this layer. Then we're going to need a piece of blotting. Then we're going to need a piece of card. It's important also for me to mention this is just how I press flowers. There may be other ways, there may be different ways people would recommend, but I've been doing this now for 6 years and it's worked for me. So I thought I'd share how I've been doing it, and it's obviously worked for me, and I've been able to get some lovely flowers that have lasted. The colours have lasted, they've looked lovely. So I've been happy with this process, and I just thought I'd share it with you. But yes, there's probably lots of other ways you can do this to get different effects and things. This is just my way. So these are viola and a little baby geranium type one there. So I'm just going to put that on that layer. I'm going to top it with blotting paper, and then I'm going to pop down the card. Now, because I'm not going to fill any more of the layers for this session, I'm literally going to pick all the rest of the layers up and pop them on top without worrying too much about their order. So that is already all packed in. Hopefully you can see that. And I've got my flowers in there. Now, obviously, it's quite chunky at the moment because some of the flowers are quite chunky, but that's where this part comes in. You put your top on, which is your wood, making sure that all of your bits line up. So let's see if we can line this up without standing up. Usually at this point I stand up so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so we've done that, and when we're pushing down equally so that we don't crush one side not the other. I start usually by putting them on part way down and then tightening as I go. So with these ones I've found that they can twist at the bottom, so if you actually hold it here when you're twisting, it saves you a lot of time where it's actually just twisting the whole screw. So that stops the screw from twisting around. So when you actually put this on, the first time you secure it, the first time you flatten them out, you'll probably find that it will only go down a certain amount because of those flowers that are slightly chunkier. When you then come back a week later to look at them, you might find that actually you can tighten up the screws a bit further. So that will then make them even more flat. So it's worth going back a week later and just seeing if you can tighten these up any more, because it will give you a better effect the flatter the flowers are. So that's just a top tip. If you go back a week early, give these a twist, see if they will tighten up, and if they will, that means that the flowers have pressed down enough and will squish down a little bit more for you. So we're twisting this one on, twisting this one on, and once then secured, as I say, it's always handy to put little notes on if you want to remember what it is you pressed and the date that you pressed it. Stick that onto the top with a bit of masking tape. Can you see how I'm pushing down and twisting? And if you can either hold the top of that and twist, and you want to get it as tight as you can, hold the top and twist, or hold the bottom if you want to, just so that it's not twisting around into nowhere. trying to get an equal pressure on them all so that it's as flat as possible. And once it's then all tightened up and secure, put your flower presses away. So as I say, it takes a different amount of time depending on the flowers, but usually as a guide I would go back and maybe check in 2 to 3 weeks. If you find that they're not quite dry and they're not quite pressed, pop them back in and leave them for a little bit longer. So I will just check that in a second to make sure I've tightened it up enough. That's all nice and secure, and that can now go in a dry, dark place ideally, which is usually in the cupboard there. So hopefully you found this useful. Just a little glimpse into the world of flower pressing. This is just a really introduction. There's a lot more that we could cover with flower pressing, what to do with pressed flowers. This is just the way that I do it, and it's worked for me to create lots of lovely things. So thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you have a lovely day. Take care. Bye bye.